Afternoon, everybody. Awake? Too many sessions? Lots of good information going on. So, my name is Sujit Ghosh. I'm a manager in the technical marketing team. I manage the team based out of San Jose. So, I've been in Cisco for a while, 17, 18 years. Started as a TAC engineer based in San Jose, and then moved over to the business unit for Aeronet, and now it's called EISG, or Enterprise Networking Group. So, been doing wireless for almost 12, 13 years. Didn't come through any acquisition. I've been part of Cisco for a while. So what we're going to talk about today, a lot of enhancements, a lot of new stuff coming as part of HA all through, okay? But before I get started, how many of you have wireless LAN controllers? Good. And how many of you are running 8.5 software? Okay, we have few brave souls over here. No, just kidding. But yes, so what my goal is, talk about 8.5, which is the latest software version. And also, we're making little enhancements on Prime also. And probably you have heard about DNSA all over the place, and a lot of stuff coming in DNSE also. I'll not touch on DNSE too much, but I'll talk about little on Prime 3.3, what we are doing to kind of solve your HA or enhance your HA, where we are going with it. And there's a lot more coming, because I can tell you, HA is #1 focus in the business unit. Because now we have realized that you really need zero downtime. That means you cannot take down your wireless network, period. Wherever you are, that's a primary medium of access. People like it or not, that is the primary medium of access. I don't know how many of you have connected last time on a wired network, right? So let's talk about, and this is the new normal, right? This is what we are working for every day. We want to make sure that every of those folks, those laptops everywhere has good connectivity. Cisco Campus. Lots of apples. We moved to Apple successfully, absolutely. But I wish it was a Cisco Campus, definitely not. So my objective is to talk today about redundancy, HA, and so that you can access your applications. And you as a network admin, a designer, what is the acceptable? Minutes? Is it okay? Less than a minute? Less than a second of downtime is what you're looking for. So that's what we're going to focus on, how to reduce your network downtime in minutes, seconds, etc. So this is the agenda for today. I'm going to focus a lot of time on the design and the deployment practices, because this is what I do every day, talk to customers and share the best practices, what we are doing in the business unit. 2 marketing slides. I'll just quickly go through it because this is important to know. Moving forward, what is on the truck, what you should be deploying. This is the new thing which we introduced about a year back or so, Mobility Express, where we have taken the software which runs on the physical controller and we can run it on a AP itself. So you can take any of the AP models and make that as a controller also. Really designed for small branch offices, 10, 15 APs. You don't want to put a physical controller on it. So what I'm going to talk about is how you do HA in this environment, okay? Then we have the next generation of controllers, the 3504, scaling up to 150 APs. This one has been around for a long time. I would say long time means about 2 years, close to 2 years, 5520. You have all the virtual controllers and the big brother, which is the 8540. Obviously, you don't see your 5508 controllers, Wisdom 2, anything on it, because they are almost end of cell, end of everything. So time has come on for you to look at migrating from 5508 to these controllers moving forward. The last software version we are going to support on the 5508 controller is 8.5, which is currently out. We have 2 maintenance releases. We have a couple of more maintenance releases planned, but nothing beyond 8.5. So that's the last software. Obviously, we'll follow the process of 5 years of support, et cetera, on it, but no new features, no new AP support will be on those 5508 controllers beyond 8.5 software. Okay? And all of this starts from here. So we are really at a transition point. 5508 controller was introduced in 2009. It lived its life. So now we are at a transition where, so the pivoting software where we will be transitioning is 8.5. So that's something everybody in this room should look into it in next 6 to 8 months of planning, because that's the software will decide what type of APs you are supporting and what type of controllers you are supporting. Okay? 8.5, we have 2 maintenance releases out. We used it in Cisco Live in Barcelona, and it had about 692 APs on the network, 15,000 clients. It did hold up pretty good on it. And also for all your DNS center deployments, 8.5 is the recommended code, because we have done a lot of enhancement on the code. So look into it. That's my is to you all.
Can you support software below 8.5 on the 5520?
Yes, the 5520 software controller was introduced with 8.1 software. So 8.1 has been taken out. It was a short-lived release, but you can support 8.2, 8.3, and anything beyond that. But the 3504 controller, the smallest one, is only with 8.5 onwards. That's the only limitation, but the rest, everything can support 8.2, 8.3, 8.5. Same, 8540 and 5520 was introduced together. So it was introduced with 8.1, which has been taken out, so 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, anything. But again, the recommended software version from escalation, from engineering is either 8.2 or 8.3, or now I would change it in CCO next month. The recommended software version is going to be 8.5 with the current maintenance. So the CCO recommendation you will see next month. I'm responsible for those changes. I'll make it to 8.5 pretty soon. It's holding up pretty good. All right, okay? So here's your AP portfolio. I have one small item which is missing on this chart. I wanted to show you in live. I don't know how many of you have seen this. Is the smallest device which we have. This is not an AP. Let me be very clear. This is not an AP. This will fit in somewhere here, but this is a sensor. How many of you have seen this? Good. If you have not seen this till now, World of Solutions has demos on it. Take a look at it. This is the latest toy we are playing with. The rest of it, you have your 1830, 1850, the 2800s, and the 3800 APs, which we have. Full portfolio of our outdoor APs. And that's all the marketing slides. So let's get to the meat of the presentation. First of all is RF. RF is the beginning of your HA design. So let's talk about a couple of things which we have. Obviously, 802.11 AC is here. We have wave 1, wave 2. It comes with a price, obviously, because it supports 80 megahertz channel bonding, 160 megahertz channel bonding if you're going with 11 AC wave 2. So as a result, the number of channels which is available for you is shrinking. So how will you design your network around it? So first thing is, I cannot emphasize enough other on site survey. Please, please don't ignore that. Site survey, active site survey, or passive site survey is my recommendation, at least active, if possible. Otherwise, a lot of questions I get on what tool to use for site survey. Currently, if you ask me today, there's no tool available in the market other than Ekahau. It's one of the best tools I would recommend. This is what we use for any type of venues we go and do their implementations. Air Magnet used to be a good tool along with, but they have not kept up with all the latest AP supports on it. But Ekahau has been pretty good. They have kept up with all the AP supports on the 2800s, the 3800s, and in future we are looking at 11x as the protocol, and they have started already looking into how to support those APs in the future. So I would recommend looking at Ekahau for your site survey and the radio planning. Coverage holes. This is also very basic. Yeah. So it starts with, if an AP goes down, how can we manage? So if you look in this room, I'm glad somebody has put in at least 2 APs on it, so that at least if you lose one of them due to any reason, somebody walks on and plugs the cable, etc., you have coverage holes. And this is another area we are spending a lot of time on it, spectrum intelligence. We introduced this with clean air long back. So we have spectrum intelligence built into our 2800, 3800 APs, but with 8.5, 8.6 software on the low end of the APs, which is that 1810, 1830, and 1850 you saw, we introduced spectrum intelligence. Not clean air, it's a little different, but we have at least basic spectrum intelligence support on those low-end APs also, and that can be enabled with the 8.6 software version. So keep that in mind, spectrum intelligence, but clean air or pure is all available in all the. So active site survey, coverage versus capacity, and this is something I keep on talking about it everywhere in the world. When you are doing site survey, don't do it for your laptops. Do it for the worst device you can expect in your network. How that device behaves in your network. Your laptops or your 3x3 special stream devices, they will be fine in bad conditions also because they have high power radio. Look for the ones which has low power on it, which is, for example, this guy, where half the power of a MacBook. The antennas are smaller, the gains on it are smaller, and these days I'm seeing lots and lots of support on 5 gig. So Cisco Live Barcelona just came back from there. My team ran the network. 92% of the clients were connected on 5 gig. Only 8% was connected in. So here we didn't do it, but in Barcelona, the main Cisco Live SSID was only on 5 gig. We had a legacy Cisco Live SSID, which was only designed for 2.4 and 5, but the main one was. So we took a chance, and it worked out well. So design your networks now for 5 gig. I know a few companies back in the Bay Area. One starts with F, which is Facebook, for example, and others, they have started developing their networks only on 5 gig, no 2.4. So that day has come, so start looking into it, where we are. And finally, antennas. Antennas are very important. What type of antennas you are looking at, depending on the type of deployment. Normal carpeted office, internal antennas are fine. But whenever it comes to a high-density deployment like this, external antennas is my highest recommendation, along with the external with any type of APs. Could be the 3800s or the 3700, etc. And don't do this. I have a collection of pictures like this, which I go around the world and take it, so please don't do this. This will make your, this is not going to help you, okay? And don't do this also, please. So, couple of things which we are talking about, and constant update on the algorithm is going on in every software release is on RRM. That's another area we are spending a lot of time, energy on it, especially focusing on DCA or dynamic channel assignment, TPC, transmit power control, and coverage hole detection and mitigation. And I'll walk you through what we are doing in all of this. And then the second part I cannot talk about anymore is RF profiles. RF profiles is what you should be looking at it especially if you are doing a deployment where you have a mixture of high-density deployment, like a conference room, etc., and then you have carpeted offices. In Cisco Live Barcelona, we had 40+ RF profiles because every room was different. We made sure that for every type of room, we had a separate RF profile, and we tweaked all the parameters as part of that RF profile. So that's very important to look into it. So how does RRM work? A lot of you may be knowing about it, but let's quickly walk through on it. So RRM decides which AP is going to be in which channel, especially the DCA function on it. So you have APs on 1, 6, and 11. They're talking to each other, but somebody brings an AP from home, and which is also operating on channel 11. What do? RRM looks into it and sees that, is that really an interfering device? Does it have enough strong signal coming out of it? Is it close to another AP which is operating on channel 11? If it is, it will change the channel on this to 6 and move the AP which is further away from the rogue AP to a channel 11. That's a very basic function of RRM. So my recommendation is don't turn off RRM. Don't go with static channel assignments. We used to do that many, many years back. Don't do it anymore. Let the system take care of it, and some of the tuning parameters I'll tell you what to do, but don't. So make sure that you use RRM to do your channel planning, etc. RRM also takes care of your coverage hole. That means in this room, we have 2 APs over here running on channel 1 and 6. If you lose one of the APs due to whatever reasons, we can increase the power on the other AP so that at least it gets you better coverage. General design recommendation for me is always that standing here, I should be able to, holding a client in my hand, should be able to listen to 3 APs. That's your basic rules of design of RF in this case. That will solve a lot of, I should be able to listen to 3 APs from that. You should have enough coverage, enough AP placement so that these 3 APs can be around. And it takes about 90 seconds for this to kick in. So if you lose one of the APs, somebody takes off the power on it or disconnects the cable, and you lose that AP, it takes about 90 seconds for the other APs to detect that your one of the APs are down. I need to increase the power on it and so that I can look at the coverage. There are a few parameters which you can work on. We tweak these parameters very closely with different releases, etc. But something to look into it is this coverage threshold. The default over here is -70. We keep it at -70 as the default, but if you want to make it aggressive, you can go to 80, but this is what we use for a carpeted office environment. And take a look at this. So this is something you want to play with it, you can, to make it more aggressive and remove some of the false positives on it. Next important thing is clean air, or what we have supported for a long time on all our APs. Always turn on the supported APs, basically on 11AC. These are always available. What clean air does is basically looks into real granular level of interference in your network. That means if it's a phone which is interfering your network, Bluetooth, microwave oven, etc., so that it can see if there is enough energy coming from those. So there are 32 times, I would say, better than any competitors. It tells you where exactly you are located, what is the zone of impact, and then can channel change accordingly. So that is what we call as EDRRM. EDRRM is not enabled by default. EDRRM means event-driven RRM. That means if there is a microwave oven and you have some AP near those microwave ovens, they only come up around lunchtime, everybody's using it, and the power is enough on those to affect your network, it will change the channel only on those event-driven RRM. So in normal conditions, RRM changes happen if there is a rogue AP, which is in your network, or if there is an interfering AP or an interfering device like a microwave oven, or somebody brings in a DECT phone from their home and connects it to the network. So EDRRM, or event-driven RRM, is not enabled by default. So take a look at that. Make sure that you enable event-driven RRM in your network.
AX.11b traditionally helps with the channel changing, but it checks to make sure that there's no calls on the way or anything like that. Will that be done here?
Yes, absolutely. So the question was the new protocol. So I call it the alphabet soup of A, K, R, and V all together helps you in determining that which APs are available, send that information to the client so that the client knows that which is the next AP to go towards and what's the power level on it. So it's a combination of R, K, and V is what you are talking about. Another important one, this is something I'm talking about it in everywhere in the world, is turn off your low data rates. And if you come to my session tomorrow morning, we are at a stage where I can say we should have only 3 SSIDs in your network. One of them enabled for 802.1x, second one enabled for PSK, and the third one is your guest SSID. Give me a reason why you should have more than 3 SSIDs beyond that. That's where we are heading for. Because you have support for 802.1x on pretty much all devices. If you have IoT devices in your network and they support only PSK keys, you have a new functionality called Identity PSK, where you can create one SSID with a default PSK key on it. But if he comes in and registers his device into a Radius server, I can give him a special PSK key, which will be used on the same SSID itself. So you don't have to create separate SSIDs for your different PSK devices. You can use one SSID for your devices which are not registered in your network. But if you come in with your nice toy, whatever you have, I can register it into the Radius server and give him a special SSID on it. So the functionality is called Identity PSK. I'll show you how this is done in a documentation, and tomorrow morning I'll go through more details on it. And obviously for your guest SSID, you have no other options. Have to have an open SSID with some web authentication, et cetera, so no way, moving forward, this is what I want to talk about around the world is 3 SSIDs should be your goal. Question?
When you say identity PSK, does that have to do with like give it out manually?
So do I need to give it manually? It's a bit of a process. So as long as you have this nice camera, say for example, IoT cameras or IoT devices, you know the MAC address of those devices. You just need to register that device one time on a Radius server and associate a PSK key for those devices. So that's the one-time manual process you have to do. And you give that key to those devices, whoever is managing these devices, they can put it in. But it's a manual process in terms of you have to register the devices, the MAC address of those devices, put in a kind of a group, and assign a PSK key for that. Okay? So reducing. So when we did Cisco Live, we turned off everything beyond 24 in Cisco Live Barcelona. For high density deployment, that's what the recommendation is. For an office type of a deployment, turn off all 11B data rates. It was funny, last year we found one person in Cisco Live Barcelona who was using an 11B device. And we were really looking for him. I would have replaced his device and given him a free phone, but next year onwards, I will not enable B rates for you. You have to upgrade your phone or whatever the device he was using. Then comes the data rates in terms of what the PHY rates you want to support on it. Obviously, the closer you are, you get a better And the further you are is the lower phi rates you get. But just make sure that what you are ready to go down to, 18 or 24 megabits is the minimum what you want to support on it. Decide on that. Again, for a high density deployment like this, I would not go anything beyond 36. For the normal carpeted office, probably I can go with a phi rate support up to 18. But for a high density deployment, we always stay somewhere around 36. And we make those cells smaller enough so that you have everybody close by and you are connected to this AP. The person sitting at the back is not connected to this AP, should be connecting to that AP in this. So make the cells smaller. Okay?
Is
Question?
that part of the IP with that 14 meters, 15 meters? That'll affect that as well, but then your cells will become really small.
Yes, very good question. And height of the AP is very, very important. And when we do keynotes, for example, that's the place where we do not have any control over it's close to, I don't know, maybe 20 feet ceilings over there at least. So yes, we really play with those numbers and make sure that we are at a 36 and really small, and we have dense deployment of those APs so that that cone is really small, so that you would have about 20, 30 people covered within one AP over there. Okay, question?
When you're handing off a single access point and you have one client connected on 18 megabit, that decides the speed of everyone else on that AP, is that right?
Yes, because it's a shared medium. It used to do that when we were in the older days but with MIMO support and all, things have changed. So we don't bring everybody down because you are at 18. So that used to happen when we had B and G type of radios without support for multi-user MIMO.
But if let's say we have 5 people connected on B or G, and one of the guys is connected at the slowest speed, all the other guys on B or G will
Yes. 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 So that's the reason I'm telling you that eliminate this. Eliminate B data rates. Time has gone for those to go. You start at higher data rates. High density, 30 is what you should remember. Okay? Then this is the part I want to focus a lot on it, because this is where the changes are coming, is RRM changes along with flexible radio assignment. So this is what we are supporting on our 11AC Wave 2 APs, the 2800s and the 3800s. This is what we call as software-defined radios, where you can take one AP and configure the radios to act like a 2.4 or a 5 or dual 5 on the same APs. So those are available only on the 2800 and the 3800. So it's an automatic process you can do, or a manual process also. So for this environment, if you are working on any of this type of environment, absolutely time has come to take advantage of RRM and FRA and enable dual 5 gig on support. So if you are covering this type of an environment with, say, 6 APs or 8 APs in that, you can say that I'm going to have only 3 APs supporting 2.4 and 5. The remaining 5 APs, I'm going to convert it to dual 5 gig. And we have several customers around the world doing that. So that's where we are going towards. And that could be a manual process, or it could be an automatic process, or the FRA or the flexible radio assignment algorithm uses something called COF, or coverage overlap factor, to decide that you have enough channels available, to decide that do you have enough coverage between the APs, to decide that if you have 3 APs in this room, that I'm going to turn off 2.4 in certain APs and convert that into a 5 gig radio. So this is how it works. FRA starts with, the first part is by default, you have the APs on 2.4 and 5. If there is enough 2.4 coverage available, and you do not have enough clients which are using 2.4 also, it can automatically say that coverage too dense, mark certain APs as redundant. So we will disable 2.4 on it completely. Or what we can do is convert that 2.4 radio to a 5 gig, because this is an XOR radio which we have. So first operation is if there is enough 2.4 available, we'll turn it off. But if you want, we can say that 2.4 enough is available. We're going to turn on that radio to support dual 5 gig. Then after that, if you still do not have enough 5 gig channels available in your network, it happens in certain countries, probably not over here in Australia and New Zealand, we can convert that AP into, or that radio to a monitor mode for security scanning, etc., to make sure that if there is any rogue APs, etc., in your network. You can do that also. So that's the other option. And the third option which we added on 8.5 is basically taking this sensor functionality and putting it onto your XOR radio itself. That means now you can convert this radio to act like a sensor. That means before you came in at 8 o'clock in the morning, we can convert one half of the AP to act like a client and associate to the other AP and run some synthetic test, meaning I want to see if it is passing a 802.1x authentication. Is it passing a DHCP process? Can I do a ping between the two devices? Can I ping your default gateway? Because usually your users will go and say that wireless is not working, wireless sucks. That's what they're going to do and say, and they're going to Twitter or Facebook and post it. But there are hundreds of other reasons why the wireless is not working. Maybe the default gateway is not working. Maybe the DHCP server is running out of IP addresses, which is not really a kind of a wireless issue, but nobody cares, right? They will say wireless sucks. So maybe they're a B client also, okay? So this is important to understand. This is something we added on the 8.5. This is how the logic works between these XOR radios which are there. And if you don't want to use the 2800 and the 3800 for sensors, you always have the option of buying this and put it into your conference rooms, etc., or high-value areas where you can run this into the sensor functionality. A lot more is coming on it. There are about 7 types of tests you can do now. But in future, I'm looking at how I can put a Jabber client or a Link client on it and simulate a voice call so that you know when your users are coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, what is the Morse code which is expected for that type of a client. Sorry, question?
Point 3 answer. Mine, I was mainly concerned about areas where they have location services running and you don't want to turn the radio off.
Okay, good. So his question was related to the monitor mode. Do you want to still keep those APs because you have location services enabled on it? So you can convert those APs to have a monitor mode on it. So this is something you should look into it. This is how the new wireless designs are going to go and look at moving forward. And this is what already certain customers are doing, saying that everything is 5 gig, taking those APs, and especially for a high-density deployment. Questions?
All the new APs run Clean Air, and Clean Air is a monitoring service.
Correct. So on all the APs we have, especially the high-end, the 2800s and the 3800s or the 3700s and the 2700s, they support Clean Air. And they're monitoring both 2.4 as well as 5 gig, as well as in this case, if it is monitoring both the 5 gig radios also. So in any of those radios, if there is an interfering device showing up, we will change the channel on that AP itself.
So if you have a new series of APs, you will never run the AP just as a monitoring AP because you're just wasting the
Absolutely. So in the moving forward, previously I used to always say that have a combination of 1:5. That means for every 5 APs running on a data serving mode, you have 1 monitoring APs. You don't need to do that anymore. You just deploy 5 APs in your network. You can enable 4 APs to serve in the client serving mode, and you can have the 4.5 APs actually in the client serving mode, and have half of the AP just to do monitoring mode.
The other question I have, if you're running the sensor,
Yep.
let's say half
Yep.
the set of APs as you said, okay, and we have a DHCP distribution problem, will that be reflected in traps in the controller? Is that how you will catch it?
Very good question. So all this sensor functionality is be all operated with DNSE. So in this case, the good part is this will not take up a license on your AP, on your controller. So the sensors will not take up, or this is not an AP, right? It should not take up but the provisioning of all of these sensors, including the sensor function on the 2800 and 3800 AP, has to be done from DNS Center. And all the information related to the reports, what is happening, the DHCP failure, et cetera, will all go to DNS Center.
It doesn't go to Prime?
No. It will not go to Prime. That's a strategy decision we made, that where are we going to send that information. It has to be to DNS Center. You will not see any information on the controller. Okay, very good question. I'm glad you asked. So that's the RF part of it. Take care of RRM, enable RRM on it, your network, enable event-driven RRM, enable RF profiles, disable low data rates, and go with at least 30 Mbps as the lowest data rates for high density deployment, maybe 28, 24 for your normal deployment carpeted office. Question?
Yeah, my understanding there's 2 versions of RRM. Could you explain that?
There are 2 versions of RRM, and the simple explanation is don't use the version 2 of it. Simple as that. Simple as that. We introduced that in probably 6.0 software release or 7.0 software release, and we made a lot of changes onto it. It didn't work, and we are going to take it out of it also. So probably in 8.7 software version, you will see that the second version is gone. So remain with the first version of RRM, which is already there, and that is what we are enhancing. For example, to include FRA, how the dual radios are going to work, coverage overlap factor, etc., all of it. So stay with version 1. Don't use version 2.
The reason we went to version 2 was we live in a campus and there's a lot of glass around the place and a lot of interference that comes from other buildings. So rather than the AP trying to see what the neighbour is, which is across the campus,
Yep.
it's obviously making a mistake when it does that, and you lose the roaming facility.
Yep. If you're happy with version 2, it's okay, but I have seen in most of the cases it did not work. So my RRM experts are saying that they're going to disable that in 8.7 completely, take that code out completely. Okay?
Real quick before you continue.
Yep.
I did get confused at one point. EDRRM is needed for microwave ovens or is not needed?
So RRM is by default enabled. EDRRM is not enabled by default. So if you want to change channels driven by events like interfering devices coming up or interfering in sources coming up, like Bluetooth or microwave, enable EDRRM. So that takes care of those deep. RRM will take care of bringing in AP from home, rogue AP, etc. But you're looking at interfering devices like this, enable EDRRM, which is not enabled by default. Okay?
You said before that increasing the power of a particular AP may
Yep.
take 90 seconds, but changing channels, as far as I know, is very
Immediate.
quick.
10
Okay,
seconds.
So why Cisco took the decision of not going as a default for the EDRRM?
Yes, we're very conservative in all of that functions. We really don't want to enable this, but in the new software releases and 8.5, especially if you are enabling the best practices. So if you are using the new platforms like the 5520 and the 3504, telling you not to use that blue cable to do the configurations, the initial configurations on the controller. It comes with a web page built into it. So connect your laptop to the controller directly on the service port. You'll get an IP address. You can browse to an IP address of 10.0.0.1, I think, and it will walk you through a section to create your basic SSIDs, IP address, and all the details. At the end of it, what it does, it enables 30 best practices on it, and one of them includes EDRRM as part of it. Okay, so that's what I'm recommending. That for the new controllers, don't go ahead and do your traditional blue cable to configure it. Use the UI which is built into it. And in case you still have done it, I don't know how many of you have seen it. There's a best practice section on the controllers also. In the new UI on the controller, there is a best practice section. And this is the only product I can, has it open over here. In Cisco, I can guarantee you where we talk about Cisco validated designs, etc. on it. But this is the only product in Cisco where the best practice is implemented in the product itself. And this will do an audit and tell you that is EDRRM enabled or not, or other best practices which is enabled on your network or not. Okay? So take a look at it. This is a good option. So that's the RRM part of it, what is going on in the RF world. So now let's talk about the controller world. Okay? So we obviously have many deployment modes. Right before this, there was a session going on SD access or the fabric mode. We have the centralized mode. We have Flex Connect. And the new one, obviously, we have been talking about for branch office deployments is the Mobility Express mode. So let's talk through the redundancy on all of this. We have come a long way. This is what you should be looking at, period. Client SSO. That means you have two controllers in your network. We should be exchanging AP information and client information live between the two controllers. In case you don't have budget to buy two controllers or a pair of controllers for every controller in your network, N+1 redundancy works. So you can say that this is your primary controller for this particular AP, but if you lose this guy, it can fall to this controller or to this controller. For every AP, you can say what is the primary controller, secondary, and the tertiary controller. This is the very basic HA which we have in our network. But again, to make this work smoothly, or what you need to do is take care of a couple of configurations which I want to highlight. A lot of you are not doing it. I've seen it. Is mark your IP addresses of the controller and the controller name so that your APs can fall back to the backup controller immediately. So this is what happens when an AP boots up. Always goes to the discovery, join, config, image download, resets, and all of that. And if everything is good, your AP is always in the run state. Okay? But what happens is there is an AP heartbeat timeout. That means it is sending those CapWap heartbeats between the AP and the controller to see if the controller is up and running or not. Okay? But you can always tweak those numbers anywhere between 10 to 30 and make it aggressive, saying that I'm going to send a ping every 10 seconds and see if my controller is available or not. Okay? And if it loses one of those, and you can tell them how many times I want to send it, what's the interval of it, you can play with those numbers. And then if there is a failure detected, what happens is the AP goes through this stage again, the discovery, the DTLS setup, and the join state. So for this, it takes a little bit of time. But in order to avoid that, what you can do is, this takes about 30 to 40 seconds minimum for every AP to detect that the controller is gone. But in order to avoid that, what you can do is, you can enable what we call as fast heartbeat timer. Okay? And you can really reduce it. You can have a separate timer for your local mode APs and the flex mode APs because they're connected over a WAN link. You want to make it a little more aggressive. And you can say that I want to make sure that the discovery timers are reduced. So what happens in that scenario is, if you configure those APs with those parameters, it will go to the join state immediately. It will avoid that discovery process and fall back to the join state, so it will join faster as soon as the timers it hits those timers. And also what you can do is, if you have a backup controller which is oversubscribed, that means you have about 100 APs on this, you have 100 APs you have just a license for 50 APs on the backup controller, you can mark your APs with some priority, saying that the APs which are having a priority of critical, they will always join the controller first, and then the APs which are marked with the second priority level will be allowed. This is again when you have an n+1 redundancy and your backup controller doesn't have enough license on it, it's overloaded, and you still want to maintain service on it, mark the priorities on the AP. So typical design, what I see or what I recommend for n+1 is basically redundant WLC in a geographically separate, could be in different city, 30 to 45 seconds of downtime, and use AP priority in case of oversubscription of your backup controller. But this is what I want you all to move towards, and this is where we are spending our time, energy on it, is SSO. So what do we mean by SSO? Is using the backup controller or a backup controller which is connected with a layer 2 network in between. So it can be in your same data center, or if you can extend that layer 2 network just for those connectivity via fiber or OTV between two data centers and have less than 80 milliseconds of latency, you can put those two controllers in two different buildings or two data centers. That's also possible. But again, having these two ports, what we call as the redundancy port on the controllers, to be connected back to back over a layer 2 network, so that we can exchange a lot. And this will guarantee you a redundancy or a downtime of less than 1 second. You will hardly see a ping missed. If you're doing a voice call or a Jabber call or a link call, you will hardly realize that there is a drop on your. But again, the requirements for that L2 connection is round trip latency anywhere less than 80 milliseconds, bandwidth of 60 Mbps, and an MTU of 1500 on it. Okay? So how this works, basically if you have a primary controller and a backup controller which is connected back to back over the redundancy port, it basically exchanges information and decides on a role which is active, which is backup, okay, or a standby on it. The APs associate to the primary controller, clients associate to the primary controller, and if you lose that primary controller now, it will inform the backup controller. The backup controller will send a gratuitous ARP to the switches, and now the switch will start then forwarding all the AP connectivity and as well as the client connectivity onto it. And in this scenario, every time a client associates to the primary client, we always sync that database with the backup controller. So that's the reason where if the AP falls to the backup controller, it will not realize that it is actually falling to a backup controller because we share the same MAC address. So in a redundant form, we share the MAC address between the two controllers, and as a result, the APs will realize that it's talking to the same controller, even though it's physically a different box. And the client database is always synced also. So the clients will also not realize that it has been transferred or the context has been transferred to a second controller in your network. So this is where I want you all to look into it. If you're not doing this, so we've started supporting this on a lot earlier software version. the effective downtime is the detection time, the switchover time, plus the client association, etc. on it. So we've done a lot of testing on it for maybe one loss of ping, voice call stays up, link call, no session drops, Citrix connectivity, no session drops, and we showed this some in the of this YouTube video. Question?
What about in terms of licensing?
Good. I'll get there. Hold on to that thought. What licensing? I have some slides on it. Then on the 3504 controller, also the latest one, they now also support full HA. So there is a redundancy port on this. So you can take one of these trays and put two controllers and put it in your data center and connect them back to back. So if you have small offices, anywhere between 50 to 150 access points, you can buy two of this and just put them onto your in a backup mode of each other and have full AP and client SSO support on it. Good part of it, the licensing part is, all of these new controllers come with RTU licensing or R right to use. You don't have to buy an AP license on your backup controller. You just buy the hardware for your backup controller. Imagine that you have bought a license of 100 APs on this, but you have connected them back to back in an HA mode. And if you lose one of these controllers, we will be transferring the license, imagine, to the backup controller so that your APs can connect to the backup controller. And if you bring this controller back again, you get an RMA version of the controller. We move the licenses back again or rehost the license on the primary controller, and you're good to go. So we really worked on this where we say that the backup controller will not require any license. You buy only the bare bone hardware. And we automatically transfer the licenses during that failover process. Then you replace your backup controller and rehost your 50 AP or 100 AP license, and you're good to go.
Is that only for the SSO or also for the N+1?
Good question. Is that only for SSO or N+1? It's only for SSO. For N+1, you have to have a backup license. But again, in case of N+1 also, you can buy a bare bone controller and enable RTU on it. But if you do not have a permanent license on the backup controller, you have 90 days. Till then, we will keep on sending you nagging message that you don't have enough license on the backup controller. It will work. We in Cisco will not, at least for the wireless business, because you don't have licenses, we will not stop your network. It will keep on working, but we will send you nagging messages saying that you need to replace your box, put a license on it.
So when you say enable RTU, you mean that I have to load an RTU license, or it's a feature that I enable?
It's a feature which you go in and enable on it, saying that, hey, I am going to use this as a backup controller. I use this just for temporary purposes, so that within 90 days, I'm going to replace my other controller, but I'll let, for 90 days, those temporary APs join over there. It's just a software feature, very easy to enable.
Okay, but after the 90 days, if you still want to keep that control as a backup with an RTU license, you have to load an RTU license.
You leave that with an RTU license as you move the APs back to your primary controller, which has come back from RMA. So you leave that a controller with 0 APs on it. And so now that message stops coming to you that you move the APs back within 90 days.
So
but
what I understand then is that it's not the controller checking with the Cisco website if you are entitled to have RTU, but it's that after the 90 days, the controller will not take APs.
Correct.
Okay.
Good. Question?
If you switch from N+1 to SSO, there used to be a 50 license penalty. Is that the case?
That was, so the functionality what we were talking about is only valid for the 5508 controllers. But for the 5520 controllers and all, you don't need any licenses on the backup controller at all. It can literally come with a 0 AP license on the backup controller. So that was an old way of doing it with the 5508s, but we took care of that on the 5520 controllers. Okay? So some configurations, this is just for your reference, how the redundancy port looks like, what are the IP address on it, and how we derive an IP address on that. And the setup is very simple. It's just SSO enabled. And as long as you have the physical connectivity with the two, it exchanges all the configuration. Even it exchanges all the software also in between the two also. So what are the options in case of Flex Connect mode? So Flex Connect is a deployment which you do for your branch offices or remote offices where you do not want to push a controller. There are a couple of ways which you can do your redundancy on Flex Connect, where you can have, again, a functionality of doing local switching and central switching. And in case of a WAN failure, you have the option that, okay, what do I do with these APs? In Flex Connect mode, the APs still keep on running. They will keep on serving your clients, but new clients will not be able to join in your network. So that's what we call as. So what we do in case of redundancy, in case of Flex Connect, we can have a primary controller at the central side or a backup controller, what we call as N+1 redundancy. If you lose that primary controller, the APs will still keep on walking, but the APs now will go and join your backup controller. This is what is your N+1 redundancy. But during this process, there will be a loss on connectivity. The clients will have to reassociate back, at least the new clients. So ideally, what I'm recommending is the SSO. That means you have a back-to-back connectivity between those two controllers and a full SSO pair. So now the database is synced between the two controllers. So if you lose the primary controller, the APs will fall back to the backup controller immediately. Your clients will not realize that your primary controller is gone. So you have the option of doing N+1 or doing SSO. As far as other functionalities are concerned, if you lose your WAN connection and your radius server is your central location, what do you do with that? How can you bring in your connectivity? So there are a couple of options which we have added. Is you might have a backup radius at your branch office so that you can have a radius server, small radius server at your branch office. So if you lose your WAN connectivity or your controller on it, the APs can directly talk to a radius server in your network. That's possible. Simple configuration on how to do that. At the same time, you can have a functionality, and I know few customers in Australia is also using this functionality where you enable a radius function on the AP itself. So if you lose your WAN connectivity over here, you enable the local radius function which is on the AP itself and make sure that your clients are getting connected to your network on it. So you can say when the WAN connection is up, we can go to the central radius server, but if your WAN connection is down, activate the local radius on the AP itself. And you can put up to 100 usernames and passwords inside that AP or a group of APs so that it acts like a radius server in this case. So that's what we call as Flex Connect local auth. That means you are enabling the AP itself to act like a radius server. And you can support all these protocols, EAP-FAST, LEAP, EAP-TLS, etc., on the AP itself. So you can import a certificate and also support PEAP and EAP-TLS in this case also. So that's one of the.
Sorry, if you have configured local users in the central radius, and then you fall back into the local radius running on the AP, that means that you have to redefine the same local user set.
Absolutely, yes. So you should be ideally, if you have two radius servers, one on the central side and one on your, you should be replicating the databases between the two. But there is no way to replicate the database with the radius server which is on the AP itself. There is no way. That's a manual process. Okay?
So for example, you had a stretched ICE deployment with two policy nodes, and there was a policy node in the remote location. You could do local radius rather than going,
Yes.
And even distributed AD deployment. If there's an AD server, a policy node, for ICE at that site, you can still do local auth.
Absolutely. And that will only get activated when your WAN connection is down. By default, everything will go to the central site. But if it's gone, the WAN connection is gone, and you have a local presence, the AP will start sending the radius request directly to that local node in this case. Okay? So let's talk about Mobility Express. This is the new stuff which we have. How does HA work on Mobility Express? As I said, Mobility Express is basically a functionality where we have taken one of the APs now and installed the controller software in it itself, especially for your branch office deployment. Because you don't want to buy a physical controller. You don't have budget, for example. How do you still get the controller functionality on it? So the Mobility Express is actually based on Flex Connect deployment itself, and it uses the protocol of VRRP to decide which is going to be your primary controller and how the failover process will work and how do I select my backup controller and basically exchange all the information between them. So again, it works on a principle of if you have a mixture of 2800, 3800, the controller, if you have the biggest controller or the biggest AP which has more capacity on it in terms of CPU and memory on it, obviously that AP will be given a preference to become the backup controller. Then the least loaded client, and also in case of a tie, it will pick up the lowest with the lowest MAC address. Typical VRRP type of a design. So this is how it works. So in general, this is your primary controller, and you have other APs which are connected to this particular AP, which is acting like a controller, or what we call as the master AP. You lose the master AP. Now we go through that evaluation process saying that which is the most capable AP in the network. Obviously, we'll give a preference to 1850 compared to an 1830. And then we will look into least client load, as well as we'll look into, in this case, what is the lowest MAC address in case of a tie-up. So main idea is you have redundancy now also for Mobility Express deployment. It's already built into it, and I always make a joke out of it. It's priceless because you don't need a license now on the APs in order to. So if you buy an AP, any AP now these days, and you download a special software, if you have a CCO account and put it on the AP, you can convert that AP itself to a controller. So if you don't have budget, you have a remote site coming up, you don't want to put a physical controller, you take one of the APs, put a Mobility Express software on it, and you just convert that AP to act like a controller. And then budget comes in the next quarter or next year, you can convert that AP back to a normal AP and just make them connect to a physical controller. Take a look at it. This was introduced about a year and a half. Now it is becoming very popular. A lot of customers are moving towards it. And with the redundancy functionality on it, it is becoming more popular so that you have full redundancy at the site itself.
So would that be an ideal place to use in, say, stores where you might have one or just two APs?
Absolutely use. And I can tell you, a retailer in the US starting with W, they are looking into it. Now you go figure out which is that W. Yes, the master AP serves, it does serve clients, and it has the other APs connect to it also. So you can enable the radio on the master AP, or you can disable the radio on the master AP and say that that guy is going to act only like a controller, taking all the APs from the other controller, other APs, and do the configurations. And you can enable it, the radio on it also, to serve clients also. So you have both the functionalities available. Hold on. One second.
Will the NA Center be able to manage? I don't mind if it doesn't join the fabric, just as long as it can be managed and controlled from the NA Center.
Absolutely. That support is coming with 8.7 software release, and we have it in our labs playing with it. Currently, 8.7 is on beta. So with the new release of 8.7 and the DNS Center 1.2, you will have support of managing Mobility Express APs, full management of it including DNA assurance.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, but 8.7 software. Question?
So with the high availability configuration on the AP, can you set the mobility controller as the secondary, like in a failover situation? So if you have a pair of 5520s in SSO, but then have a local mobility express AP as a fallback, is it a possible configuration?
No, we don't do that. So we don't combine between the Mobility Expresses and the 55, because as I said, the Mobility Express is a different software, which it converts that AP to a controller, so we don't mix that up over there. When you are doing a Mobility Express deployment, we do redundancy at that site. So that's the...
No mix of lightweight and mobility. It's
Express.
lightweight or mobility.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? But you have the lightweight APs can connect to a Mobility Express controller, and if you lose that controller, you can have a second AP acting like a controller. It cannot go to a 5520 controller in your data center and do it. For that, it has to be in the Flex Connect mode to go to a second controller. So you have to select for your branch office deployment, either you want to do Mobility Express and keep everything contained at the site. For example, he was talking about a retail site. Do that. But at the same time, if you say that I don't want to put a controller at the branch side, I have to manage the configurations, blah, blah, etc. on it, just go with Flex Connect. Put a centralized controller and have everybody connect to the centralized controller. So you have to select that. And that's a very good question. And that's where we are now. You have to select between Mobility Express or Flex depending on the type of architecture you want to go with it. You cannot mix and match. I'm glad you asked it, but make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about, now we talked about the infrastructure, right? Let's talk about Prime and MSC and CMX HA. This is for your reference. If you're doing CMX, make sure that you're using 10.3 software version. MSC, if you're still using it, make sure you're using 8.0. And for Prime, anything above 2.0 is good for HA deployment. CMX, as I mentioned, 2-box HA is supported. One is active and the other is the passive server. Failover time is about 7 minutes in ideal conditions. Okay? This is how you configure it. This is just for your reference. CMX cannot be not to be upgraded to a new software in an HA. You have to disable HA. That's important in order to do the upgrade of CMX to the new software version, for example, 10.3 to 10.5. So what are some of the best practices around this? Again, lots of enhancements going on. Connecting AP to the wired network. Make sure that you distribute them. If the APs are on the local mode, port fast BPDU guard, make sure their APs are connected to it. If they are enabled on the flex mode and you are doing local switching, make sure those APs are connected to a trunk port, especially if you're doing local switching on the APs. If you are doing deployments like this, you can always put it on a modular stack. You can have all the ports connected to the stack, or if you're connecting to a VSS pair, you can split it up saying that 2 of the ports are going to go to one pair of the VSS stack and 2 of them can go to another. Port channel, highly recommended, so that you can load balance between the ports on it. Simple configuration. Another option, VSS pair, if you're doing that, so that if you lose your VSS pair or one of the switches in the VSS pair, you can. So this is one of the recommended designs, what we test out in our labs also. Connecting the APs to the HA pair, make sure that you have in this scenario, you can have one single switch or a stack, and you have your HA pair connected to it, and this could be your SSO pair also, so that you are exchanging those state information between the 2 controllers, so that if you lose one of them, your clients will fall back to the backup immediately. Or you can put it to a Catalyst VSS pair also, so that if you lose one of them, it will fall back. Some of the best practices which I recommended. For campus designs, Anywhere where you want to reduce between 30 seconds or a few minutes of it, what to do on it. Upgrading, that's an important one in an SSO pair. So say for example, you have an active and a backup controller. On normal conditions, they should be running the same software version, say 7.6 in both of them, okay? And your APs are running 7.6 everywhere. Now I come up with a new software version, say 8.0. What you need to do is you upgrade the primary controller. Just upgrade the controller, okay? Download the, do not reboot. Do not reboot. As soon as you put that new software on the primary controller, since they are on an SSO pair, we will copy the software automatically. You don't have to do anything. It happens at the back end. So don't reboot the controller. Now there is a functionality called pre-download or pre-image download. That means now we can push that 8.0 software also onto the APs. So now the AP can run two software. Actually, it is running 7.6, but it has already downloaded 8.0 on it. All of this operations is happening at the back end. Now you can issue a command to swap the images on the AP. Just swap the images. The AP is still running. Then what you do is reboot that AP or reboot the controller now to use 8.0. And when you reboot that controller to go to 8.0, the AP will come back and see that, oh, the controller has upgraded to 8.0 and I already have 8.0 on it. It will start using 8.0 software for its functionality on it. So the steps are upgrade the HA pair, the primary one, with 8.0. It will be pushed to the backup controller. Do the AP image download on the AP itself so that the AP has both the images on it. Then you reboot the primary controller. The APs also will reboot. And when they come and join back the controller, they will see that, okay, the APs are, the controller has upgraded to 8.0. It will swap the image, and it will start using 8.0 into it. Jensen, 1 second. There was a question over there.
How do I verify whether the APs download both images correctly and they are just,
Hold on to that thought. I have made some enhancements on it. Where it is, I'll show you exactly. Just hold on to the thought. I'll show you. Jensen, yes.
The better option is to initiate a reboot on the controller and the APs at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if you reboot the controller and then the APs find out that the controller has changed the software, they will reboot later.
Yes. But sometimes you do not have access to rebooting the APs all the time. You have to make sure that you go to the switchboard and
You can initiate the reboot from the AP if you schedule the reboot of the controller.
Correct. And I'll show you exactly how to do that in few minutes in Prime, what we have done in Prime to do all that process right now. So in this type of a scenario, you still have about, with 500 APs, 7,000 clients. I've done this in many, many networks. It takes about 5 minutes, 12 seconds for the whole upgrade procedure, etc., on your network. And obviously, if you want to make this much more efficient, reduce the time on it, if you have a backup controller which is running completely isolated. So this is your SSO plus a backup controller. So N and N+1 redundancy in your network. You download the code on it, transfer it to the backup controller, do not reboot it, pre-download your software to 8.5, and you now have your APs running 8.5 on it. Make the APs now join your backup controller because they are all running 8.5. You upgrade your or reboot your backup controller or the primary controllers when they are up again, and you can now say that, hey, APs go and join back to your AP SSO pair. So a lot of customers do that, where they have a completely backup controller, upgrade that controller to run 8.5, etc. on it, make the APs join them, then boot your original controllers, upgrade it, and we have seen that this process takes 3 minutes almost to.
To be transparent, the APs will reboot when they join the backup controller, right?
Yes.
Just to be transparent.
it will not reboot. I would not say a reboot.
Becomes unavailable.
The radios on the APs will reset.
Correct.
Let's say that way, that the APs, it will not go through the complete reboot, but the radios will go through a flap, so your clients will get disassociated and they have to come back again. Let's say it that way, okay? So again, this is another way of reducing your backup. My goal is to make this to 0. Hopefully next year when I come back, I will give you a solution how to make it to 0. Don't ask me how now.
I've got one idea. With the recommendation you gave earlier saying that each client should hopefully be able to see 3 access points with
Yep.
a good shot. If you had 3 separate AP groups, and if that client can see 3 separate AP groups...
Did you go through my slides already?
No.
Okay, then hold on. I'll tell you how to do that.
Yeah, well, ideally, if you could do like an ISSU where you can say, okay, 2 out of the 3 AP groups can upgrade, but that third AP group...
You went through my slides. Okay, so hold on to it. You will be surprised over there. You went through my slide. That's what we call it as a rolling AP upgrade. Okay? So this is a functionality which we added on the Prime 3.3 release, where you can have your upgrade groups. So you can say that. So just go through this flow. Pre-download the image, upgrade groups, reboot, and join the AP. So that whole process which I showed you in the previous slide, it's all a manual without Prime 3.3. Now what I have done is push this into a, so this is how it works. So you have your primary controller running 8.3, okay? And you have your N+1 controller which is running 8.5, okay? Now what you can do is create your AP upgrade groups. That means you have enough coverage, you select only in this format that these are the APs I'm going to upgrade first, these are the APs second, and these are the APs third, so that you have enough coverage on it, right? Then what you do is start this process saying that those 4 APs will be moved to the backup controller first, then the second set of APs, and then the third, and then finally the 4th set of APs on it. Till now, everybody was doing this manually. Now it's a procedure which has been added on Prime which can take care of this. So you create your AP groups on it, and then you upgrade your backup controller to 8.5, and then you can create a process now to bring all those APs back to your controller on it. So a lot of customers have been doing this, but they were always doing this in a manual process. Now, with Prime 3.2, you can just upgrade the controller on it, and then in Prime, we added us upgrade groups on it, where you can say that these APs are going to be part of one group of, or you can import from a CSV file. So if you have a CSV file of all your APs, you can group them saying that these APs will be moved first, this will be moved second, these will be moved third, etc. on it. And then you can schedule this also. So in the middle of the night, if you want to start that process, go through all of that. So this is a job can be created, download the controller code on the primary controller, pre-download the image, take the first group of APs, take the next group of APs, and all the APs are now registered to the secondary controller. Then once the backup controller or the primary controller is upgraded to 8.5, bring the APs back onto it itself. So this is how you create the groups, and this is where you mark the progress on it. So you ask the question if that AP has been moved and the AP software is copied or not. This is where you will be able to see the AP upgrade by groups. What is this? So for every individual AP, now you can see what stage it is in. Is the software being copied properly or not? If there are failures in the software copy process, you will be able to see it over here. So if there is a failure, this is where it will show up in this case. So this is again only on Prime 3.3. The whole process has been added as part of it.
Can an AP belong to more than one AP group?
No.
So that approach is going to complicate things when you had the mapping between SSIDs and AP groups.
So that is different. That type of grouping is completely different. This is just for upgrade procedure. This is another set of groups I'm talking about. This is AP upgrade groups. We love groups, okay? So we love keeping on. So now finally for the Flex Connect deployment, you have the option of having all the APs at the branch side. At the data center, you have a pair of 5500s or 8500 or the 7510 controllers. I've seen some customers doing this, that in addition to the Flex Connect APs, they have a backup controller at the site also. So in case you lose your WAN connectivity, at least the APs can fall back to the backup controller. But this is a very expensive solution. You don't want to probably look into it in everywhere. But if you really have a critical site, you can look into that option. Okay. So again, key takeaways: HA on RF, HA on the controller, SSO or N+1 redundancy, mostly SSO. We reduce the prices on the backup controller, no license needed on the backup controller. Look into it. Look into upgrade procedure to reduce your downtime. And finally, look into prime SSO as well as rolling AP upgrade on prime to take care of all this process. You just create those groups, let the system take care of moving the APs and back and forth. Till now, you were doing this as a manual process, 3.3 and any software version. It doesn't depend on any software version you're running on the controller. It's a functionality on prime which will take care of this. And now the goal is to reduce your downtime as much as possible for your network to at least to somewhere around 3 minutes as of now, which is, you can do it in once in 6 months probably, right? But there are situations coming where we want 0 downtime. I'll come back to you guys with that. Question?
I'm just going to throw it out there. With the AP upgrade groups, you're saying that's in an N+1 arrangement. So if you did already have the investment in an SSO arrangement, you still need that third WLC to do that failover?
Yes.
Is there potential where if you could run a virtual wireless LAN controller and do the right to use license case where you're saying before you should technically have licenses on that N+1 arrangement?
The N+1 controller, yes, you can have that as a virtual controller also. You don't need that to be a physical controller.
Oh no, I just mean from a licensing point of view, like say
That's
you have
also.
1,000 APs,
Yep.
technically you should have 1,000 licenses on the SSO arrangement and on the virtual WLC as well. Would Cisco say, well, if I'm only going to use it just for that 3 minutes while I'm upgrading,
You can do it.
do the benefit of the doubt and do it that way?
Yes, you can.
Easy to split your SSO with just having one box.
Well,
And then one of the other ones, you know?
well no, the
Then break
SSO
up.
treats it as one, so in that upgrade group example, you had to have like the old arrangement, which was N+1, like just split the SSO and have them as 2 independent ones, which is
Yeah, exactly right, yeah.
counterintuitive.
But it's breaking the SSO and bringing it back is more painful, I believe.
You'd rather just leave the SSO.
Exactly. Leave the SSO pair in it, upgrade that, move the APs to the backup, and then move them back on that, and let Prime do that job on it. Okay? So that's all I have. There is a link to all the documentations which I talked about, and also all the YouTube videos, etc., on how this process works. Definitely take a look at it. And this is where my team keeps on creating all the content so that you have the latest information on it. And this whole AP upgrade process with the rolling AP upgrade, there's a video, nice video for a 5-minute how you walk through those process. So go to this YouTube channel of ours. You will be able to see all the information. And so it's called Cisco WLAN, the YouTube channel is. Okay? I think that's the last slide I have. I will be here for a few more minutes. If there is any questions, I'll take it up over here. Otherwise, thanks a lot for attending.